Alex from Swoosh English, and in today's class I'm going to be focusing on the reading section of the OET. I'm going to be looking at some tips. Just get myself adjusted here. It's going to be quite a short class of around 10 minutes, and then I'm going to make it interactive by asking you some questions. So first of all, sorry we've started a little bit later than advertised, just a few technical issues, but we're on track now. So OET reading. It is a section of the exam which can be challenging, and naturally it's something which we need to practice with and get as familiar with as possible in order to score well in this part of the exam. But there are a few tips that we can look at which can help us in this process, and so that is what I'll be looking at in the session today. So let me share some of these tips with you. I'll just bring up my screen now. Okay. Okay, so first of all then, in relation to this class, as I've said, we're going to be looking at some of the strategies related to the reading subtest of the OET exam. So just a quick overview to begin with. The reading exam has 3 sections. You can see A, B, and C. There are 42 questions in total. Most of the questions are in Part A, got 20 of them. Part B has 6, and Part C has 16 questions. For Part A, you're doing matching, short answer questions, and gap fill type questions. And for Parts B and C, they're both multiple choice questions. Part B has the shorter text, 6 of them, and Part C has 2 extended texts. The test in total will last for an hour. So you'll have 15 minutes for Part A. Oops, just go back there. And you will have 45 minutes to do Parts B and C. This subtest, the reading subtest, is worth 25% of your grade, okay, just as the other subtests are all each worth 25%. So let's have a look at some of the tips then. So the first tip that I give in terms of reading is to make use of your background knowledge. This is very important because you're all healthcare professionals, so you all have experience working in a healthcare context. So it's very important that you use that experience when it comes to your reading. So if you're picking up a text, for example, on something to do with bed baths, or something to do with medication amounts, or if you're going to read a text which is defining mumps, measles, and rubella, these sorts of infections, these are things which you probably have quite a lot of knowledge about from your own background experience. So use that. Use that in the context of accessing the texts, making sense of the texts, looking at the way that the texts are structured. So it may be, for example, if it's giving instructions, it might use a particular format, and you might be quite used to this because you work in a hospital setting on a daily basis. This is something which you would be familiar with. One of the things that you may not be as familiar with, of course, is all of this information being in English, which is why it is so important that you practice reading English as much as possible. But there are certain things, such as the blood transfusion process or using nasogastric feeding tubes, which, if you've had experience doing these things, using these things, and using these things correctly, then if you have a text which relates to the use of these sorts of objects or processes, then it's something that you should be quite comfortable with. So using background knowledge will help you to orientate yourself to the information in the text, and use it because there's nothing so comforting as familiarity. So that's the first tip then, and you can use that in all of the texts. The text in Part A, where you have 3 separate ones. Use your background knowledge as you go in to make sense of them, and you can also use it for the texts in Parts B and C as well. So you should have certain expectations, certain experience, and you can use that as you go into those texts. The other tip that I give, again, and it applies to all the sections A, B, and C, is that you want to begin your reading by skimming. So by skimming, what we mean is looking at things like the title to begin with. What is the title of the article? What is the topic? So that's the first thing that you want to be accessing. And then you want to have a quick look at the information in the paragraphs, maybe looking at the topic sentences, the first sentence of each paragraph, just to get an idea as to what the text is focusing on. So if it's part C, for example, if you have a quick look at the topic sentences, you can see, okay, so what is the topic? The topic might be something to do with a fat tax, for example, and how useful it's been in terms of helping people battle obesity and reduce their weight. So you might have a look at that, and then that's your title, you've got that idea, and then you're skimming the topic sentences just to see what the attitude is of the writer. Are they quite positive about this initiative? Are they quite negative? So you're just getting a really general idea, just so you have some access in terms of what the topic of the text is, and also what kind of text it is. So are you going to have to read it to detect opinion? Probably, because quite a lot of the questions in parts B and C involve detecting opinion, particularly part C. In that case, generally, what is the opinion of the author? Is it quite positive or is it quite negative? So just very general when you're looking to get your background sort of skimming involved, just a very general read of the text to get a general idea as to what the text is about. In part B, it's really important to quickly skim, because you want to be reading to see if it's a text which is quite heavy in detail. A lot of the texts in parts B are got quite a lot of detail, even though the texts are quite short. And so you want to say, okay, am I reading here to get a specific piece of information from within that detail, or is it just the gist? Am I getting the overall message of the text? Some of the questions will focus on the gist, and they'll ask you whether the text is advising about something, or whether it is recommending something or warning. And so those sorts of function words, you can find the answer to those by giving a very general read of the text. So always begin with a skim. In part A, it's important as well, because in part A, skimming those texts will tell you what the texts are focusing on, what the main background point of the text is. Sorry, I said there were 3 before. There's 4 texts, of course, for part A. There's 4 texts that you got to read. So having that sort of that skim, giving that sort of overall gist reading to the text will tell you, okay, great, this text is focusing on definitions, the other text is focusing on medication amounts, the other text is focusing on when it is that you need to hospitalize the patient. So getting that background information can really help you with the next set of questions where you have to scan the text. It can basically tell you, okay, where am I going to find certain information here? So as I say, always begin with a skim. And then the final tip that I want to have a look at today is about paraphrasing, because paraphrasing comes up in all sections of the exam. It will come up in part A, because you will have to, when you're scanning the information, you'll have to recognize how certain information in the questions is paraphrased compared to the information that is actually in the text. So you need to be able to recognize that. But also in parts B and C, paraphrasing is very important, particularly because they're multiple choice questions. You have to recognize which of the multiple choice options is a paraphrase of the answer in the text. So an example of that is this question from part B. It says the manual informs us that the blood pressure monitor A is likely to interfere with the operation of every piece of medical equipment. B may not work correctly in close proximity to some other devices, or C should be considered safe to use in all hospital environments. So let's actually have a look then at a section of a part B, which is a paraphrase of one of these options. So read this carefully and then decide which one is it a paraphrase of. So let's have a look. Care should be taken to avoid the use of the monitor within 7 meters of cell phones or other devices generating strong electrical or electromagnetic fields. So which one is being paraphrased here? Well, I've highlighted it. It's option B. Okay, so you can see the paraphrase may not work correctly in close proximity. Basically is being paraphrased to say care should be taken to avoid the use of the monitor within 7 meters of. So 7 meters of would be the close proximity. Other devices is paraphrased to say cell phones or other devices, and may not work correctly is basically saying, yeah, care should be taken to avoid the use of. Why should you take care to avoid the use of it? Because of the functionality, because it may not work correctly if it's used too closely to these objects. So that's the paraphrasing then, which is very important, and it comes up in all sections of the exam, as I said before. So just a quick summary then of these tips. First one, activate your background knowledge, use your background experience effectively. You're doing the OET test, it's all focused on healthcare situations, so use that to help you make sense of the texts. Start by skimming, get a general idea of what the text is about. Once you've got that general idea, it will make better sense of the actual questions, and it will give you a good access point in terms of beginning to answer the questions. And finally, 3, be ready for the paraphrase. Lots of information is going to be paraphrased from the questions to the actual text, so be prepared for that. And you have to recognize how words can have the same meanings, but be used differently. So as we just saw, close proximity to can be paraphrased to take care of using this piece of equipment within 7 meters of. So you can see the idea is the same, but the words that are used are different. So those are some background tips then in relation to OET reading. What I want to do now is to do a quick exercise with you, which will relate to these tips, just so we can start putting this into practice. So for all of those of you who are watching this class on Facebook Live, then I encourage you to participate and to get involved in this section of the class so that you can give your answers, and that by actively participating, hopefully we can demonstrate that we're learning something, where we're getting better at using these tips. So here is the actual activity. Okay, so here is a question then from part B of the OET exam, and you can see that you've got the question here. The first thing, as we said, is background knowledge. So in order to activate our background knowledge, we want to see, okay, so bed baths. So what do we know about bed baths? Have you had much experience with bed baths in terms of your function in the hospital workplace? If not, do you know people who have? Or do you just have knowledge about this because it might be important, even if it's not something that you do personally, it might be important in terms of part of the process that occurs within your healthcare setting. So that's using your background knowledge then. What do you know about bed baths? Then we want to have a very quick skim. So bed baths in hospital, okay, talks about cleanliness, and it's a human right, not a luxury, okay. So we've had a quick skim then. So basically it looks like it's talking about sort of the importance of bed baths from our skim, but now we want to look in a bit more detail so we can really make sure we're answering the question correctly. So have a look at the question then, A, B, or C. I'm just going to give you a few moments to read the extract carefully, try and recognize any instances of paraphrasing in order to make sure that you are answering the question correctly. Okay, so A, B, or C. I'm going to give you some time to read and answer the question now. Okay, so I can see that we've got some answers coming in here. I'm just going to give you a tiny little bit more time. Make sure you're really checking for paraphrasing to make sure that you have chosen the answer correctly. Ah, okay. So let's have a look at this then. So in terms of the actual answer, let's see. So we had our skim then in order to get the general idea of the text, in order to get the gist. And so from that, we knew what the topic was. And so then we looked at the questions and we had to decide, what is the extract explaining? Why bed baths are sometimes necessary, how bed baths can maintain patient dignity, or why bed baths are often left to low and level nursing staff. So from looking at the answers then, there was a mixture, but most of them were either A or B. So let's see, let's start with B. So how bed baths can maintain patient dignity. So it talks about the fact that there are some circumstances in which patients will not be in a position to maintain their own personal hygiene. So you got maintain there, the repetition of that word. But does it say how bed baths maintain dignity? Not really. So maintaining hygiene, dignity is more than just hygiene, isn't it? So I don't think we can look at dignity and hygiene as a paraphrase. We need something a little bit more than that. So let's have a quick look at C. Not as many put C, but we can have a look just to make sure. So about bed baths being left to lower level nursing staff. So it does definitely talk about lower level nursing staff, doesn't it? Because it talks about junior or newly qualified staff, and it says they're often left to them. It doesn't explain why. It actually says that bed baths are a vital aspect of providing nursing care, yet, so it's a contrast, they are often left to junior or newly qualified staff. So it's actually quite, in a way, it's strange that they would be left to newly qualified staff, or only left to newly qualified staff, because they're so important, they're vital. So A then, why bed baths are sometimes necessary? Well, let's see. So cleanliness has been described as a human right and not a luxury. There are circumstances in which patients will not be in a position to maintain their own personal hygiene. In such cases, they may be reliant on nursing staff to perform key hygiene-related activities, such as bed baths. So in all of that, the first half really of that text, we're being told why bed baths are sometimes necessary. They're necessary because cleanliness is so important, and also there are circumstances where patients cannot maintain their own personal hygiene. And so in that case, the bed bath is necessary. And obviously it must be provided by nursing staff. So that's the paraphrase then. Sometimes necessary is paraphrased by saying that there are circumstances in which the patient will not be able to maintain their own personal hygiene. So saying that there are circumstances means that it's sometimes necessary. They may be reliant, sometimes being paraphrased as may in this case. And then the necessity of it is obviously paraphrased by saying that cleanliness is a human right. If something is a human right, it's necessary that it be provided. Okay. So that was our activity. Well done to all of those who selected the right answer. If not, keep using these techniques, keep tuning in to these sorts of classes, because it's important that you keep practicing until you get to exactly where it is you want to get to, which is obviously getting these questions correct.
Thank you very much, Alex, for today's class. Can you see me okay, Alex?
I can, yeah.
Ah, great. So
Okay.
great to have so many, just my video. Great to have so many students who are taking part in today's activity. This is Alex from Swoosh English. Oh, I think I'm not looking right here. So yeah, thank you very much for taking part in the activity. Please let us know your answer if you didn't write your answer in there, and then justify what the answer was. Okay, if you're watching this video at a later date, and it's really important to take part as much as possible in all of the activities that we provide you. We want to provide as much support as possible to every single nurse, doctor, or medical professional who's watching right now. So if you liked these little mini video lessons on Facebook, or if you're watching on YouTube, then please let us know in the chat box. If you'd like us to do these more regularly, please let us know, because we want to help and support you, like I said, as much as possible for your upcoming examination, and whether you've got it, you know, next month, the month after, and so forth. And if you want to access and get access to our free OET starter video course, then all you need to do is share this video lesson on onto your Facebook page, and then you can this video. I have shared the OET live class video, so I have shared the OET live class video, and you'll get automatic access to our free starter video course. So thank you very much for coming along today. Please give your comments in the chat box about what you thought of today's class and what you learned. That's the most important thing, is to take the information that we're giving you and put it into practice and apply it, so that you can improve your scores in OET, whether you're at a C, C+, or and you're trying to get to an A or even a B. So we've had so many of our students who've had A's and B's before. And if you want to get more of our blog lessons, just go to swooshenglish.com/blog. That's swooshenglish.com/blog. Thank you very much for taking part. We're going to be doing another one on Friday. So please let your friends, colleagues, family members, anyone else who's preparing for OET, please let them know about this class. And like I said, if you want us to do more of these sessions, just let us know in the chat box. So thank you very much. This is Alex from swooshenglish.com.